Hello, and welcome to We the Students, a political discussion sponsored by Nauset Regional High School's AP Government and Politics program in collaboration with Nauset's video production class. During the next 30 minutes, our panel of Nauset government students will discuss the issue of immigration in the United States. More specifically, should immigration be regulated by the federal government? I'm your guest host, Liz Check, a junior here at Nauset and a veteran of the AP government class. Just for the record, opinions expressed here belong to the panelists and are not the views of Nauset Regional High School or the Nauset Regional School District. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a special email address for our panel today. Please feel free to email us your thoughts and suggestions about today's topic so we continue this discussion in our government class. Now let's meet our panel. On my left, arguing that illegal immigration should not be regulated by the United States government, Marina Brooks, Lily Gaeta, and Koki Riley. On my right, arguing that immigration should be regulated by the United States government, Spencer Jones, Francesca Galazzi, and Jeremy Spivak. All right, let's get started with an opening statement from the pro-regulation side.
So I think we can all agree that immigration is an important part of our country and has allowed the U.S. to become the great democracy that it is today. The U.S. is a melting pot unlike any other country in the world, and we can agree that everyone sitting at this table has benefited from the generous immigration policies of the U.S. As we as a team reviewed the history of immigration, we found three main reasons that immigrants come to the U.S. for: personal rights and liberties, safety, and economic opportunity. The protection of these same benefits, rights, safety, and economic opportunity, is precisely the reason that the federal government should regulate immigration.
All right, and now we can hear from the open borders side.
Well, when you look at the history of this country, you think of immigration, you think of the Statue of Liberty. It's this great monument in which 12 million immigrants came through Ellis Island and started a new life, in which many of your great-grandparents and relatives went through. I think we can all agree with that. But what it says on this great monument, on the tablet, the new colossal they call it, quote, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, the tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." This means basically that we are supposed to be thankful and forgiving of these people coming into this country. Regulating immigrants coming into this country is just not the way we should be going.
That's a good point, but regulation does not mean anti-immigration. It just means immigration at a rate that benefits everyone.
Why would you want to regulate people like Elon Musk, Albert Einstein, Andrew Carnegie, or Sergey Brin into this country?
It's not a matter of excluding people. We just have to let them in at rates so it doesn't overwhelm the United States federal government, the welfare, and just the general public.
Even when the vast majority of them are great people who come to this country for the main purpose of trying to help this country?
There's no way to determine who are the good people that are coming into the country and those who want to do harm to the country if there's not immigration regulation. There's no way to tell if you're coming in here to do a good thing. And as you've established, the majority of immigrants come here because they're looking for economic opportunity. They want to be part of the U.S. and the culture that we have. But there are people who want to come here and do bad things, those who are against westernization and against what the U.S. government stands for. And there's no way to tell the difference between those people and others without regulation of immigration. And quite frankly, we don't want to subject, if you're from the Middle East, you don't get to come into the U.S. because you could be a threat. That's not what immigration regulation is. It's taking one person as they come in and looking at their criminal background and making sure that they are coming into the U.S. for good reasons, and also that the U.S. government will be able to support them when they get here.
Even when immigrant-owned businesses produce $775 billion in sales?
And that's fantastic. The U.S. welcomes immigration. Immigration regulation does not mean stopping people from coming into the country. It means letting people into the country at a rate that will be sustainable for both the immigrants coming in and the people that are already here.
But there's so many proven benefits of letting more immigrants into your country. Like, they're beneficial for the economy, they benefit jobs, they add diversity and culture to this country that we just can't produce. And I think that's really important to have.
I totally agree with that, but you can add that and still find who you're allowing into the country. Like, you don't have to let everyone in. You can monitor who's coming in, because obviously most people who are coming in, are great people, or people who are just trying to make a good living. But again, there are people coming in for negative reasons, and the benefits, all of the cultural benefits, all of that are all great for the country and are all pretty much what makes us so diverse and removes us from a bunch of white people. But instead, we can't just let anybody waltz in whenever they want.
I think one of the main benefits of immigration is because a world without borders makes significant economic sense. So allowing workers to change location significantly enriches the world economy. So why do we have barriers that limit human mobility?
Well, that's all speculation with the economic growth, or at least for the United States. So if you want to talk about the effects of open borders, then it's best to look where there are already open borders, and that's Europe. So several years ago, the Schengen Agreement was signed with 26 European countries. So it guarantees open borders between those countries, allows free immigration and no regulations. So initially started off well, but the issue with open borders is that it can't handle crisis, even the smallest of them. And that's exemplified by the Syrian refugee crisis, yes. So 1.3 million Syrians fled to Europe, and that's not a big number. Could have been a lot more, but already the effects are devastating.
How are the effects devastating? For example, the Paris attacks, those terrorists were all French citizens. The 9/11 attacks, they were U.S. citizens. These were not immigrants coming into the country.
It's a matter of how people see it. See, the people in Europe think that it is the refugees, and as a result, it increases hate against them and it reduces support.
that's
for
not the
immigration.
fact.
But that's also Europe. This is not the same country.
Europe is very similar to us in that they have democratic values and
That
various other
brings up an
aspects.
interesting point, open borders side. How do you propose open borders for all countries or just those surrounding us? Because as you've mentioned in Europe, that's countries a part of the European Union. Do you promote a union of the United States and other countries for open borders, or do you propose open borders for all?
I would propose a union. I think, say, if the United States, Canada, and Mexico, in theory, and some of the small Latin America countries were in a union in which open immigration would circle around those three. I think it would be great economic benefits.
Well, it's still regulation.
But
That's not open
but
borders
it's
for the
open-
entire world.
we're on the subject of open borders. We're
for the entire
proposing
world.
open borders. We never said the entire world. We said for the United States of America.
Yeah, but
We
you're not
believe-
open to the entire world, just to neighboring countries, and that's a very big difference.
I don't understand how you're tying in other parts of the world when we're asking if the U.S. government should control open immigration, and that means within this country, we're not bringing in Europe or any other countries
Immigrants
like
don't
that.
just come from Canada and Mexico.
Well, I'm not saying that, but if the other people from other countries like China and India want to come here, then our border should be open to them. But
Right, and
whether
we're
their
not- So
border
would
is
that
open
include
to
them
them-
with the
Your borders
union?
open to the
Regulation
world.
doesn't exclude people from certain countries. It's anyone who wants to come here can apply to become a legal U.S. citizen. Everyone has that same right. Everyone has the right to apply to become
exactly,
a U.S.
but-
citizen. So the question was, if the U.S. were to have open borders, would you say that there would be a union of countries that come together to have open borders? So then you're excluding people who come from countries that are not part of that union to be able to come in between those borders. That's regulation. And if you have open borders to the whole world, that's a completely separate issue.
Regulation is thinking about a wall.
No,
Regulation.
it's not. Regulation is defined as the ability
Then
to
what is
control and
regulation then? You're
I'm
not being
telling you.
How do you
specific enough.
propose to control the immigrants coming into the country?
Well, immigration regulation can be as much as a wall or as little as just doing checks before someone comes into the country. I believe that it should be left to the federal government to decide.
Well, under Trump's current plan, which in fact is not going to work, a wall is not logical at all. It's extremely expensive. There's no logistics behind it.
I would say that none of
We
us
aren't
support
endorsing
having a
that.
wall because
No,
we
and I'm not
support-
saying you do.
when we support immigration and we understand the benefits of immigration and we think it's important that the U.S. be a leader globally about how to take in immigrants, take in refugees, how to have a culture that is accepting of these people coming in. So we think that a wall is too physical of a barrier. But we also see with what's happening in Europe, we have these open borders, people are allowed to come in, and the culture is turning against the refugees that are coming in because they're blaming them for the economic troubles, for government programs that are too far spread. They have too many people and too little resources because these crises came up that they weren't prepared for, and they don't have the ability to suddenly shift to accommodate the sudden accumulation of people.
And I'd like to follow up on that. So you say you easily deny the effects of unlimited immigration in Europe, but look at what's happening. I mean, Britain is leaving the European Union. The far right is on the verge of winning in France. The government in Italy has resigned. It's domino after domino. You have to have some regulation, or there's chaos.
But how do those things have to do anything with immigration other than Great Britain leaving the European Union, which is a bad move anyway? We're talking about Great Britain leaving the European Union. That's going to have great economic consequences for that country. The reason why they left was because of immigration, and since they are a country that's dominated, is ethically dominated with the same sort of people. They're not as diverse as, say, the United States.
Not necessarily. They have quite a few immigrants there.
Also, the United States is a country of United States. So Europe is like an area of a bunch of different countries. So states cannot secede from our union because
It's called the
of
European
immigration.
Union. It's
I-
countries that have come
I don't
together and
think-
formed a union.
I don't think you're getting my point. It's that if you have uncontrolled immigration, it leads to the rise of extremism, and not just extremism with the immigrants, but also with the locals and the citizens.
Well,
who might be
actually, the
alarmed.
majority of aliens that come to the U.S. return home after a few days, weeks, or months. So reducing the number of people we allow to reside permanently in the United States would do nothing but protect us from terrorists who do not come here to settle, but to plot and commit violent acts.
So do you not want the U.S. to be protected against people who come here from terrorists? You still have to have regulation to make sure that terrorists aren't coming into the country.
But how do you prove that? You can really never know. Like, someone could look great on paper, but you don't know what they're thinking. Like, there's no
And
way
you can't
to tell.
stop everyone.
No,
I mean, it's not an unflawed system, but trying to work to try to stop people will eventually be able to limit the number of people who are coming to do negative things.
But I already said this though. The people who do the negative things are already from here.
Just like
They're
in the
not
Paris
immigrants.
attacks, the people who
Well,
did
that's
the
because
attacks
we
were
regulate,
from
Regulation-
France.
because we
and
regulate
regulation-
immigration and don't let them come in.
And-
Seriously, if you open your borders, what stops the leader of Al Qaeda from moving to the United States?
But you keep on talking about Europe.
what
you
stops
keep
them?
on
You
talking
want
about
to talk about
Al-Qaeda.
the United
States and how
You're
it would
ignoring
affect the
facts
United
such as
States.
53% of Silicon Valley's workforce is foreign-born. 21% of Inc. 500 CEOs of the fastest-growing companies in the world were
What does
born
Silicon Valley
outside
have
the
to do with
US.
Al Qaeda?
He's just,
Well,
we're talking about the United States. We're not talking about Al Qaeda. We're
And
not
in
talking
order
stops
to-
them from
about
coming
Europe.
here.
This isn't
It's
foreign
the problem
policy.
with talking theoretically is that in a theoretic world, everything is perfect, and you can look at, well, what if this were to happen? And then you have time to balance and mitigate the negative effects of certain crises or certain people coming in. You have to look at a real-life situation where a similar thing is happening and be able to, yes, it's not exactly the same situation, but you have to be able to compare and contrast the two situations to see, would this actually work in the U.S.? And in our belief, no, it won't work. And besides, immigration regulation is beyond just a concern of national security. It's about people coming here to the U.S. and expecting a certain quality of life. They come here expecting to have jobs and economic opportunity, rights, safety, government programs that will be able to support them and help them, school systems that will have places for their children, classrooms that are of reasonable sizes so they can learn, and open borders. People can come in at any time, in any amounts, and government programs can go from being able to function and work to completely overstrained, and there's no way to regulate that with an open border.
That's a flaw within the program, not within the, like, how borders are controlled.
No, it's the programs cannot simply expand and contract to meet the needs of the people that are coming, not to meet the needs, excuse me, to meet the size of the people that are coming in. Because the people, so for example, with the Syrian refugee crisis, those people's millions of immigrants started coming towards other European countries in a surely small period of time. And large government like regulations and programs, school systems, like in Europe, and in England, they didn't have the time and the ability to expand to fit the needs of those people coming in. With immigration regulation, you can say, okay, X amount of people are coming in. These are the areas we need to expand to be able to meet the needs of those people. And that's setting those immigrants up for success when they come into the country, not waiting for them to come in and then trying to figure out a plan once they're already here.
That's also assuming that they all use those programs. They don't all use programs like that.
But they're all destined to use programs once they get here. They're going to need to go to school. They're going to need government aid. They're going to need to be able to learn the English language. Those are programs that are set up, if not by the government, then by other local organizations. And they need to have an idea of the number of people coming in so they can meet those needs of those immigrants.
But the fact is that when the economy grows in this country, when things are going well, immigration goes up.
And that's fantastic.
So,
Right. To interrupt for a second, just an update for our viewers. You're watching We the Students, a public affairs political discussion of AP government students at Nauset Regional High School. At the bottom of your screen is a special email address for our panel. Feel free to email us your thoughts and suggestions so we continue the discussion in our government class. So let's continue.
So what I was saying is that you're saying that we won't have the capacity to bring in all these immigrants and all these people, but when the economy is going well, immigration and illegal immigration goes up. So these people won't need as much help, if any help, if the economy is going as well as it is.
The world right now has more barriers than ever, and by our country regulating immigration so heavily, we are holding back our country from moving forward. Immigrants bring new ideas and add to the American labor force.
Regulation does not mean anti-immigration. You can still increase the number of immigrants coming into the country, therefore benefiting the economy and increasing the global awareness of the U.S., but still be able to regulate, to mitigate the negative effects of immigration, like these overstrained government resources and natural resources, to be able to ensure that immigrants coming here are set up for success.
When immigrants come to a country, they provide labor, capital, entrepreneurship that can set up new businesses that cater to a global market, which can help the U.S. economically and on a global level.
And that's fantastic. The U.S. can use immigrants to our benefit, but we need to be able to regulate the number of immigrants that are coming in to make sure that we use them in the correct areas, to make sure that we have programs that will help them.
Well, there's plenty of illegal immigrants in this country right now, and it doesn't seem like there's an overstrain of really anything.
And the main problem with your pitch is that you're not specific enough. You're just saying limit, and you say, oh, no, we're not going to do the border, but we're for immigration at the same time.
What are you limiting? Like, is there suddenly such like an overpowering of immigrants in this country that you need to limit more?
Well, it depends. During times of calm and peace, then no, it's not really an issue. If the government sees it fit to raise the amount of immigrants that are allowed to come into this country, then so be it. But in the case of crisis, for example, a large natural disaster, a war, then migrants or refugees will flood out at a much higher rate, and we need to be able to control how fast they come in. It doesn't mean we just block them, but we need to regulate the rate at which they come in so it doesn't overwhelm us. If that means just slowing it down a bit, then that's fine.
But people have been coming into this country for hundreds of years, and there has been no crash of any kind.
Because we regulated our immigration.
But people still
when we regulated
get here
our
illegally.
immigration, we had the Great Depression. When we regulated our immigration, we had the Great Recession in 2008.
Yeah. And when we regulated our immigration, we had the Roaring '20s. Look throughout U.S. history, we've always regulated our immigration.
The Roaring '20s? The Great Depression happened in '29, last time I checked. And also,
the '30s.
These immigrants, they don't just need support. And yes, some of them may need support, but the truth is that the vast majority of them take jobs. Of the 25 million immigrants who are employed, 30% of them are pro-related occupations, 25% of them are service occupations, 17% in sales, 13% in natural resources, and 15% in production and transportation.
And
so my point is these people do the jobs that we don't want to do.
Yeah, what was the source you have for those numbers?
Just to clarify for everybody.
This was Inc.com.
So not a .gov
Also,
website.
immigrants are they're fulfilling the minimum wage jobs that Americans are just not wanting to do. Like, they fill jobs, they create jobs in our economy, they help it.
And that's a benefit of immigrants to the U.S. So regulation does not mean stopping.
We open ourselves up to having more immigrants and increasing our economy.
At what risk, though? Because you can have government programs that are working, jobs that are being fulfilled, and then a war happens or economic downturn happens in another of these countries that you have an open border with, and suddenly it could possibly be millions of people want to come to the U.S. and are looking for resources. There's no way to mitigate that.
And the countries that we're right next to, I mean, some countries like Mexico and some of the ones in Central America can have negative things happening, whether it's related to, what's happening in their government, or if it's what possible drug wars or whatever. So that has the possibility that they could come at any moment.
I'd like to point out an interesting statistic that I found. So in America, we are pretty pro-immigration, and because we regulate it, so 58% of Americans say that growing diversity is good. Now I'd like to look at countries such as Greece and Italy, which have been open borders for several years, and the numbers are astoundingly low. Only 10% and 18% respectively think that
But they would only
diversity
say
and
that
immigration is good. Because they're in crisis, because there's no control.
No,
Because it
they're
doesn't
only
work in
say
their
that
country,
because
that doesn't mean it's not going to work here.
They're only saying that because they're the ones too lazy enough to lose the jobs.
No.
What are you talking about?
So you're telling me, wait, excuse me. So you're saying 90% of Greece is too lazy and they lost their jobs.
I'm not saying all of them, but I'm just saying
Just
obviously there's
90%.
going to be a backlash to someone who says that the immigrants are taking their
They're
job.
looking
Why is
for
the
a
why is the
resident.
backlash smaller here then?
Because there is a backlash here. It's called
Not
Donald Trump.
not nearly as big.
But no, it's just as big, I'd say.
Well, I'm pretty sure 58 and 10 are quite different.
Yeah, well, who won the presidency? And what was he running on? He was running on, let's stop immigration, let's build a wall,
Controlling
let's
it.
limit.
But
And
we're not saying that we simply agree with Trump. We're saying we offer a different perspective. We're saying regulation to maintain and control the speed at which immigrants come into the country. Trump, from what we've all heard, is very much anti-immigration. That's regulation of immigration is not anti-immigration.
Well, Donald Trump said the same exact thing
We're
too.
not saying what Donald Trump
But
said. This
but
is
the
our
problem is
opinion.
with regulating immigration is that you're never specific enough of what you're trying to do.
And that's a problem
So
with
you're-
the policy. So you have to change the immigration policy. That's
What
not a problem
policies
with
do you have?
immigration.
That's the whole problem with your argument. There's nothing concrete to it.
How do you
Okay, well, we
see
should
it?
have an immigrant cap per year so that we don't get too much per year so that it overwhelms the country. That's a good start, and that's what we have right now. Do you think we should get rid of that?
I think we should because I'm looking at all these numbers and I'm seeing that all immigrants do is
What numbers are you looking at?
or help us. I'm looking at immigrants. For example, immigrants start businesses twice the rate of native-born citizens.
That's just then we can increase
Um,
the number of immigrants coming to the U.S. If we're worried about the U.S.'s economy infrastructure, then we can increase the rate of immigrants coming to the U.S. knowing that they will create jobs and economic opportunity. But you still have to that's regulation. By saying X number can come in, that's regulation.
And you keep going on about the economic benefits of open borders. What you seem to ignore, and this is very important, is what happens culturally. You see, if a massive amount of people from a different culture come over, not regulated, they just flow over, it's going to cause a lot of tension naturally.
America is a country of immigrants. That's why we are such a diverse country with multiple times cultures in it.
And you're
know,
making it
I'm-
sound like
we're all
diversity is a
immigrants.
bad thing.
No, diversity is a good thing. But
You're
if you-
living in a
That's
country of
what did you
diversity.
just say?
You just
Diverse-
rebutted diversity.
No, diversity is a good thing, but if you let too many people come in at once, it will create hate and backlash, which will increase.
Why do you think that's going to
Because-
happen?
no,
Because
but
that's
if-
what happened in Europe. You
Yes.
see,
Are
the
we Europe?
wise learn from other mistakes. The mistakes of others. If we look what happened in Europe when they opened their borders, and then look here, we can take steps which will prevent the same crises there from happening here.
Well, I'm sure we're similar to Europe, but we are not the same country. Just because something happened there doesn't mean it's going to happen here.
Yeah, because we can't make the same mistakes.
And and I've already said this, but these crises aren't because of immigrants. These crises are because of people who start complaining because an immigrant outworked them to get their job.
Not necessarily. I'm sure that all this hate in Europe didn't just come because just randomly. It was because of a massive flow of migrants. And it's not just about jobs. It's because of the instability that it can cause. And this is not just from immigration, but this is from unregulated immigration. Just massive amounts of people flowing in.
So are you saying that immigrants cause hate and it's not the people who are already
No,
living there?
No, it's not. I was personally, as a personal experience, I was recently in Europe and I was in Italy. And a lot of the people that I was with they saw that there were other refugees around them, and they wanted to help those refugees. They saw people that were in need of help, but they also see that they have issues with their economy. They're having issues with their government, and in many instances, they see that refugees are having more federal help and aid than they think that they necessarily deserve, or they think they should be getting more. And so that makes an animosity between those who are coming here and those who are born here. And so it's not that the immigrants are causing this cultural animosity. It's that people have an innate tendency to be wary of what's unfamiliar. And so we have to, and that's a negative effect of immigration. And so in order to make sure that the U.S. has an understanding of welcoming immigrants, we need to make sure that we regulate the number coming in so that we can introduce people to the culture that will benefit us.
It doesn't even have to be that, actually. I mean, when the immigrants come to the country, almost all of them have good intentions, and now and then there's just a few that have bad intentions. So when it comes to regulation, what you can do is just do checks, make sure that the ones with bad intentions and hateful feelings towards America, or not even that, just bad intentions, stay out, and all the good immigrants who want to help and contribute to our society come in.
But how can
it
you
can be as simple
determine
as that? Vetting and checks.
But
Which is kind of what Donald Trump is opposing with the extreme vetting, isn't it?
yes.
Well, it's extreme
exactly.
vetting. You can just do moderate vetting, if you will.
But how do you have control of how
But here's
that
the other problem
escalates?
is, like, with open borders, how do you propose making sure that, so you're saying, okay, so with open borders, hypothetically you have people coming in and there's no check. You don't know necessarily who they are or what their plan is, and you're saying that's okay. But once they're in the U.S., you're saying the majority of these people coming in are good, but there are a few who have bad intentions.
But there's also people who live here already,
Right,
and
so
the
the
more
born here
people
have
who
bad
live here
intentions.
who have bad intentions.
The issue at
there's
hand.
no number, there's no way to see the X number of people come in, because with open borders, anyone can come in and out at any time. There's no way to maintain the number of people that's in the U.S. and for the federal government or just any government system in general to be able to look at their population and understand what parts of different cultures are made up of their population, what the diversity is, and what the negative risks are of who's in the country and who they need to be looking for.
Well, here's a simple question, just for you. If you open the borders, how do you stop someone, like a terrorist, from entering the country? Or how do you prevent them from launching an
like, once
attack?
they're in the
Most of
country,
the terrorists that perform terrorist attacks are already in the country.
But how do you stop more from coming? You can't.
can't.
That's
they
the
don't
point.
come.
If we
That's
have
what
open
that's
my point
borders,
exactly.
You're
the
being
ones that are
paranoid.
here.
That's our point. Oh, our point.
Being paranoid. I'm being realistic.
But what
there
about
are
the people who
who
do have good intentions? What about the people who get torn away from their families
Let them in.
because they're considered? But the people who are already here, like a woman named Liliana Ramos, she was living in the U.S. for 21 years, and she was raising 2 daughters and a son. She had a clean record, 2 decades of work, had paid all of her taxes, and then she was deported for no reason. She did not do anything, and she was deported. Immigration tears families apart.
And you're talking about how immigrants can be potentially dangerous people. Well, in 2010, less educated native-born men between 18 and 39, the incarceration rate was 10.7%. That's native-born. But for foreign-born Mexican men between that same age rate, the incarceration rate is at 2.8%. So my point is the people here are way more dangerous than the immigrants, than any immigrant coming
But there's
in.
no way to know that unless you regulate immigration.
Well, those facts.
There's no way to
facts are
even
here.
know the number
Well,
of people
yes.
who are legally living in the U.S. unless you have regulation.
Only 5% of people in prisons are non-U.S. citizens. So you're saying
There's
I-
no
I
way
don't
to
understand
tell the
what you're-
people who are like already living here and were born here are also want to plot something bad.
Well, they could, and that is a serious issue. But the thing is, we can stop terrorists from entering the country through regulating immigration, and we already do.
How do you know they're a terrorist?
You can do background checks. You can see if they are.
But you never know
You
what
never
people
know.
are
there's
thinking.
nothing
There's
definite,
no proof
definite about
that only immigrants are the ones that are going to be doing the terrorist attacks. So you
just
can't
simply
single
not
them out.
So you're
Okay,
saying
well,
the
facts say-
Unfortunately, guys-
anyone.
So let's
Unfortunately,
say-
guys, we're just about out of time, so we have to hold our discussion there. Again, we invite you, our viewers, to email us your thoughts and suggestions about today's topic so we can continue this discussion in our government classroom. We thank Nauset High School's television production class and Lower Cape TV for making this valuable experience possible for all of us. That concludes another segment of We the Students, a political discussion sponsored by Nauset Regional High School's AP US Government and Politics program. I'm Liz Check. Thanks for watching.